Beaux of the Fifth Column weighs in on abortion.
But from a completely neutral standpoint.
Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, in the village, we have all sorts of people. The village is a collection of people from different walks of life, different ideologies,
different backgrounds,
different religions, no religions. And so we allow everything in our village because that's what we believe in. We believe in freedom of speech, we believe in freedom of thought, even if it offends people. And so everybody in the village knows that we are 100% pro-life, and that we do not believe that it's good to kill human beings, and that's what abortion does. But not everybody in our village believes the same thing. So my good friend Peter sent me and if you want to be part of the village, all you have to do is go to facebook.com/Vin and Sori and you're in. But my friend Peter posted this video in our village on the Facebook website. And this is the big homie Beaux of the Fifth Column, very popular YouTuber, very intelligent individual. And he's giving his opinion on the Alabama law.
Okay.
So Peter sent this to me and asked me what my opinion on what the big homie is saying is. So we're just going to go through it and comment. How's that?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's go.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Beaux again. So tonight we're going to talk about choice, life, some statistics. We're going to give you some real information here about the topic that is dominating the headlines. There's a lot of information out there that is just plain false, and we're going to go through it. You will not really find out my personal opinion on this at this point, mainly because it's irrelevant. Okay, but before we can get into...
Beau's opinion is irrelevant because he's a man, I'm assuming. And men shouldn't talk about this issue. I guess we need to reverse Roe versus Wade because those were all men that made that decision. And I guess the Alabama law is okay because it was a female that signed it into law.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the logic?
The statistics and all of that stuff and the truth behind the matter, we have to address that other issue. Because it's the U.S., we have to address the religious issue. So, okay. Friends, I'd like you to join me. Open your Bible to Numbers chapter 5, verse 15. Start reading. Yeah, that is the description of an abortion in the Bible. The reason there's an abortion in the Bible is because the husband, believed the wife cheated on him. If infidelity is a just reason, certainly rape and incest are. Just a thought, though. This is the problem with going to a church. They give sermons where they just jump around in the Bible and they never actually read the whole thing. You miss out on some pretty important things, and you may walk away thinking something is true that isn't. Okay, now let's talk about heartbeats.
The irony, of course, is that the big homie didn't read the text.
Right. Yeah.
So when he says...
I know, I was like, is he going to read it? Or?
He goes, Numbers describes an abortion, but this is what happens when people jumping around in the Bible and don't read the text. Well, how about we read the text? How about we do that?
Yes, let's start there.
Well, first of all, this is completely irrelevant because I have mounted probably hundreds of abortion arguments in the internet world, and I've never used my religion. As a matter of fact, you can go to Vin Debates Abortion in the Middle America channel, and you can see yourself whether or not I used any religion in arguing for abortion, against abortion. I guess Albany Rose, our Satanist,
oh, right,
atheist, pro-life woman.
Right.
I guess she needs to be informed about this verse as well. Of course, it wouldn't be relevant to her because she's an atheist.
Right.
She also doesn't believe in killing little children. But the one thing he was right about, though, about Numbers was it is in the context of a man has some random feeling of jealousy. Mm-hmm. And women in the ancient Near East were basically screwed if that was what was going on. The guy could beat the hell out of her, he could do whatever. And so what is the biblical solution to this moment when a guy has this crazy feeling of jealousy? Well, according to Numbers, he's to bring her to the priest, and let's look at the active agent in this so-called abortion. Verse 17, you'll see it on your screen. The priest shall take holy water in an earthenware vessel and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the tabernacle.
The dust.
And put it in the water. It's water and some dirt on the ground. And then you bring the priest, and the priest brings you before Yahweh, before their God. And the priest says, drink this dirty water, and if you cheated on your husband, then your thighs will swell and all the rest of it, and you won't have kids.
Your thighs will shrink and your stomach will swell.
Right, which is euphemistic for reproductive organs of a woman, and you won't be able to have children. But if you didn't cheat on your husband, then nothing will happen. You'll be able to have kids. Now, since Beaux, I'm assuming, doesn't believe the Bible, and the vast majority of our audience doesn't believe the Bible, then 100% of the time when the woman drinks that dirty water, nothing will happen to her, and she will get exonerated, right? This is what happens when you actually don't read the Bible. And it was just ironic to me
because he was saying that and he never read the passage.
And he never read the passage. Look, ladies and gentlemen, if all that's going on in Planned Parenthood is that people are taking some dust from Main Street and putting it in a cup and telling the girls to drink it and then pray that God takes their child, then I'll be okay with that. I'll be okay with that. Of course, it's not what an abortion is. So I don't know what to tell you. There is actually a discussion, though, about the death of an unborn child in Exodus. Did you know that? Did you know that?
In Exodus? No.
Check this out. Exodus chapter 21, verse 22. When men strive together and hits a pregnant woman so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as a woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. So in scenario A, the girl's pregnant, the dude's getting into a fight, she gets hit, the child, it triggers a delivery, but the child is okay, you just pay a fine. But if there is harm,
then you shall pay life for life. Whoa.
Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Meaning, if you harm the child, and here is the definition of the Hebrew word for harm, it means fatal accident. If you fatally harm the child, then you get the death penalty in the Old Testament. So, the Bible clearly says that if you cause the death of an unborn child, you get the death penalty. Now that's the Old Testament. And as a New Testament Christian, I fall on the side of mercy. But it's silly and dishonest to say that the Bible co-signs abortion when it's just not true.
Right. Oh, yeah.
In the first instance, it's just a concoction of dirt and water. In the instance where a child is actually being killed, there's the death penalty. Let's move on, because we don't need to appeal to the Bible to know that abortion is wrong. Continue. Unbelievable.
Go.
6 weeks. Okay, ventricles don't form until 16 weeks. Maybe heartbeat in the heartbeat law isn't what you think it is. You might want to look into that.
What?
At that point, at 6 weeks, the size of the embryo is about the size of a sweet pea. So a third the size of a Florida mosquito. I'll give you a statistic here I really want you to remember.
What? He's saying that, so he's saying that the heartbeat really isn't beating at that point?
Well, it's not a fully formed heart, is what he's saying. It's not a fully formed.
So
the heart
what?
is beating.
Yeah.
We know that the heart beats before 16 weeks because we just had a baby.
Yeah.
And we heard his heart beat at around 7-8 weeks.
Oh, yeah. And when I had my miscarriage, they went in and I was 5 weeks at the beginning, and they said 5 weeks is a little soon to be able to hear it. They said it can be there, but it's just hard to hear because it's so small.
Right.
And
right.
so in you.
But it's this argument from development. Hey, newsflash, guys. A child is not fully developed once he's born either.
Right.
You realize that.
Yeah.
Being born is simply a stage in development. As a matter of fact, there are many unborn children who are more developed than born ones. For example, this 24-week-old in the NICU, is outside the womb, but he's less developed than a 9-month-old who could be murdered in New York City. So the argument for development doesn't really make any sense. Furthermore, why is it relevant the size of the child? That's like saying, a newborn is the size of a tuna, and we eat tunas, so we should be able to kill a newborn.
Yeah, he's basing the value of the child by the size that it is. He compared it to a smaller than a mosquito.
A mosquito, of course. This is what you have to dehumanize.
That's exactly what I was like, well, okay.
You have to reassign the species of what you're doing. Of course, he didn't say that it's... Go ahead.
I mean, a mosquito is a nuisance to us. We all hate mosquitoes, and they suck our blood.
Just squash them.
It's just squash it and get rid of it.
Squash
and so then he compared it. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, well, this is what you have to do in order to justify killing human beings.
Yeah.
You have got to dehumanize them.
Yeah.
But Dr. Seuss can help you. A person is a person no matter how small.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this is a silly argument because just because his arbitrary... I'm sure Beaux wouldn't say, well, no, you can't kill an infant outside the womb. But if you're just going by size, who gets to determine which size gets to live and which one doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
According to Peter Singer and Francesca Minerva, even if the child is born, they should still be open for killing. We'll talk about her in a second. But this argument from size is not a very sound one. And the argument from development is not a very sound one either. Children are small when they're born, and they're not completely developed when they're born either.
Go.
97% of abortions occur before 20 weeks, or at 20 weeks or before. 97%, remember that number. 20 weeks. 97%. Okay, so some of the arguments that we hear against this is that, well, actions have consequences. They do. They certainly do. But
it's true.
This isn't a natural consequence anymore. It's a manufactured one. It's not a consequence, it's a punishment. The legislature has removed the ability to deal with this. So...
Okay, so he's...
saying it's not natural? It's like, what?
Okay, so the argument is, you knew what you were doing when you were having sex, and you passed 4th grade biology, and you know that if you have sex, you run the eventuality of having a child.
Yeah.
And so if you are a parent, you are responsible. I wouldn't say consequence. You are responsible to care for that child. It's called responsibility. It's not punishment. And you notice how he's saying that banning abortion somehow screws with the natural order. Did you hear what he said?
Yeah, I did.
It's a manufactured
Yeah,
one.
I was like, what is he... what?
It's literally the opposite of fact.
Oh, I know.
The natural order, the natural ramification of a pregnancy is a delivery most of the time. Abortion is the manufactured intrusion of a human agent and human instruments to kill a child and circumvent the natural order. That's
right.
That's backwards. It's backwards. Well, let's keep going.
It's not actually a consequence anymore. This would be very similar to, in the old days, if you cut off your hand, well, you just cut off your hand. Today, we have the ability to reattach it. Well, the legislature thinks you need to be more careful with your Sawzall, so they pass a law saying the doctor can't reattach it. Oh, it's just a consequence. No, it's a punishment. Okay, well, you knew it was a possibility. A car accident's a possibility when you get in a car. And this seems to be something that people don't understand. Consent for sex is not consent to carry a child. That is evidenced by the number of abortions there are.
That's crazy. How are we comparing that? Putting somebody's hand back on and making them whole is the exact opposite of what abortions are. Abortion tears the child apart. Like, why are you making this crazy analogy that doesn't even work?
It actually undoes the pro-choice position.
Yeah.
If I take a Sawzall and I cut off my hand, it's my hand. When a doctor takes a sofa clamp and tears the arm off of that baby, it's the baby's arm. It's not the mom's arm. As I've said over and over again, when a woman is pregnant, she does not have 2 heads, 4 arms, 4 legs, 20 fingers, and 20 toes. And if she's pregnant with a boy, a penis is still not part of female anatomy. It's not her body. That's number one. That's the first reason the sawing off the hand analogy is fallacious and silly. It's not my hand it's not her arm that's being torn off, it's the baby. Secondly, reattaching an arm is a reparative surgery.
Right, exactly.
It's taking somebody who's not whole and making them whole. Abortion is taking a whole person and tearing them to shreds so that their brain matter oozes from their mother's cervix, which was the baby's brains, according to an abortionist who has done hundreds of D&C abortions. This is how you know that you're advocating for a wrong position, when you make these horrible logical errors that actually end up disproving your argument and not proving it.
Go.
Consent is a very simple concept, but
This I have to do. The consent to sex is not consent to pregnancy, because look at all the abortions we have.
Yeah.
Okay, well, consent to childbirth is not consent to motherhood, because look at all the infanticide cases we have. The same logic. Katrina Effort in Canada strangled her baby after it was born, threw him over the fence, and went about her day. And you know how she got let off in that situation. And you know what the judge said? Here's a quote from the judge. And this is her logic in letting Katrina Effort go after she strangled her newborn son to death. While many Canadians undoubtedly view abortion as a less than ideal situation to unprotected sex and unwanted pregnancy, they generally understand, accept, and sympathize with the onerous demands pregnancy and childbirth extract from mothers, especially mothers without support. So this judge in the High Court of Canada let this woman go for strangling her newborn because she appealed to abortion law. So don't tell me that I'm using a slippery slope argument when I talk about infanticide in connection to abortion, because a high court judge in Canada used the exact same argument to justify her letting this woman go for killing her child. So if consent to sex is not consent to pregnancy, then consent to childbirth is not consent to motherhood. Let's keep going. Oh, you mean there's a bigger issue other than consent happening with Katrina Effort? You mean that as a mother, she's responsible to care for that child, whether or not she consents to be his mother? I agree with you.
Go.
Apparently we're losing it in this country. We don't understand it. Okay, this is where we run into the idea that women are using this as birth control.
That's a good point. I do think pro-lifers mischaracterize this as women just hopping, skipping, jumping into the Planned Parenthood clinic, massacring their baby and going along with their day.
Yeah.
That hasn't been our experience with women who've had abortions.
I only knew one.
I've only seen one. The vast majority of the women that we've dealt with were scarred by it and are still scarred by it to this day. Mm-hmm. So I agree with him there. Good call.
You know, when you go in for an abortion, they actually ask, you know, how many have you had? 8% have had 3 or more. 92% have had 0, 1, or 2. So that really isn't happening. Not to the degree that people seem to believe it is. It's not a thing. Well, convenience abortions are 99% of them. That's true. That is true. But the devil is in the details. How is convenience defined? Basically, 1% of abortions save a life. Everything else is convenience. So if the child would be born with a horrible defect and spend its 2-week life in incredible pain, well, that's convenience. Definitions matter. Well, we've got an abortion pandemic where we're just going crazy. Okay. 2017, there were 879,000 abortions. Seems like a big number. Doesn't seem like a big number when you think that in 2015 there were 903,000, and in 2014 there were 926,000, and in 2011 there were 1.06 million, and in 2008 there were 1.21 million. That's right, the numbers are going down. Why? Because the internet has allowed young people to get sex education in states that only teach abstinence or don't offer it. education.
Because before the internet, nobody knew how not to get pregnant. Did you know that? We didn't know about. I didn't know about condoms coming up in the 90s. We needed the internet for that. That's not why abortions are decreasing. I bet you anything abortions decrease in Alabama, Georgia, and Missouri. You know, abortions will decrease exponentially. How many abortions did we have per year in the 50s? And then the silly, 875,000. That seems like a big number, but a year before it was, 900.
Oh my God.
Like he's a white male, probably in his 30s. If I were to say, yeah, we only killed 875,000 white male in their 30s last year, that might seem like a big number. But the year before that, we killed 1 million. Oh, let's go to Poland in the 40s. Oh, we only killed 485,000 Jews this year, but the year before we killed 587,000.
Oh my gosh.
This is what happens when you have the internet, because nobody was taught in school. Hello, any kid that watched MTV, I remember being 7, 8 years old watching MTV and hearing about Pedro Zamora and all those folks, and there was as a matter of fact, the safe sex stuff was way more explicit in the 90s, in the early 90s, than it is now. It's not even close.
What
there was
about
condoms.
MTV?
Oh yeah, condoms. Well, there's a show called The Real World, and you bring all these people together. But there was this one guy, Pedro Zamora, and he had HIV.
Okay.
And so his big thing on the show was talking about safe sex, and of course he wasn't talking about abstinence.
Right.
He was talking about condoms and things of that nature and all that jazz. So this was just ridiculous. It's like all these kids, they had no idea about how not to get pregnant until the internet. And a little 16-year-old teenager full of hormones is going, I have no idea how not to get pregnant. We need to Google this, babes.
Yeah.
Did you know there's such a thing as condoms? Oh my Lord. I was 16 years old. I was 16 years old in New York City. I took my girlfriend to Montefiore Hospital, got her an IUD.
You did?
Yeah. No, it was an IUD. It was a Depo-Provera shot. Depo-Provera.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. I got her mom to sign off on it. We went and got her a Depo shot. 16 years old.
How did you find out about that?
No
you
internet.
Really have the internet.
I know, we didn't have the internet. We had AOL. Unbelievable. These people are ridiculous.
AOL.
What is going on? That's why birth rates are declining. I mean, abortions declining.
Go.
It's important. Okay, so can you screen a child at 6 weeks to find out about defects that are going to occur? No, you can't. You know when that happens? The first round, the one that tells you whether or not the chance is there, the big chance, that happens at 11 to 13 weeks. At 15 to 20 weeks, there's that number. Well, that's when you find out for sure. It's when you find out if they have spina bifida or Downs or whatever. 97% of abortions occur at 20 weeks or before. It's almost like there's a reason for it. Okay.
Yeah, there is a reason for it. It's called eugenics, and it's called ableism. This is something in the Albany Rose discussion that hit me when she was like, I feel so terrible for kids who are alive today who are conceived in rape when they hear these abortionists talking about how they should be dead. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine being a Down syndrome kid and hearing that? The implication that your parents should have been able to kill you or had the chance to kill you if they found out you had Down syndrome. That's called ableism.
Yeah.
It's called eugenics. It's what the Nazis practiced, and it's what Miss Margaret Sanger, the originator of Planned Parenthood, talked about when she talked about human weeds who need to be extirpated from our culture. What did she say? The morbid fecundity of the unfit. And it's the same exact language.
Right.
It's called ableism. And imagine if he would have said, hey, at the 20-week screening, the mother finds out if the kid's going to be black. And,
people would be like, what?
People, you racist bastard!
Yeah.
Can you imagine being a kid with Down syndrome and here? See, this is what, you don't think about stuff like this. Iceland has effectively ended Down syndrome in their country by meticulously massacring anybody that's found to have Down syndrome in the amnio. Furthermore, if we're going to go by that logic, here's Francesca Minerva. She wrote an article along with her friend Alberto Gubalini, but I'm only quoting Minerva because she's a woman, because only women have the right to speak on these topics. She wrote an article called Afterbirth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? Here's one of her arguments. A serious philosophical problem arises when the same conditions that would have justified abortion become known after birth. In such cases, we need to assess facts in order to decide whether the same arguments that apply to killing a human fetus can also be consistently applied to killing a newborn human. An examination of 18 European registries revealed that between 2005 and 2009, only 64% of Down syndrome cases were diagnosed through prenatal testing. This percentage indicates that, considering only the European areas under examination, about 1,700 infants were born with Down syndrome without parents being aware of it before birth. Once these children are born, there is no choice for the parents but to keep the child, which sometimes is exactly what they would not have done if the disease had been diagnosed before birth. So the argument is, you see what he's arguing? He's arguing is, if you have a heartbeat bill,
no, I know what he's arguing.
then you're not letting the parent kill that child, and then they're going to be stuck with a Down syndrome kid.
Yeah.
Well, never fear. Francesca Minerva has a solution for you, Beaux. Why don't you just kill the kid after it's born? Same problem. You're talking about killing, you're talking about cleansing our culture of disabled people. I think people with Down syndrome are beautiful people and deserve to live. And I don't think we should discriminate against them because of their disability or the strain or burden they would pose to the family or society. And if you hate Down syndrome kids that much, at least let them live and give them up for adoption.
Now, the other idea that's out there is that this is all just young people running around, hot rodding in their cars and making out in the back seat, right? It's not true either. 31% of abortions are for women over the age of 30. Crazy, isn't it? In fact, if you were to add 25 to 29, well, that's another 27.6%. So 25 and older, that's more than half. It's not what you think it is. The top 3 reasons for having an abortion: not ready. Those are young people. Second one is not having the money, can't afford it. It's almost like poverty plays into this a whole lot. We don't want to address poverty, though. We just want to legislate, abortion, punish people. And then the third reason is they're done having kids. That's right. Those good mothers that actually had their children, that's 59% of women who have an abortion. 59% already have kids. The stigma that is created in the propaganda, it's just not true. It's just not true.
Amazing.
Before, I want to go back to the point before.
Yeah.
He was saying that if the abortions are happening before 20 weeks, because he was trying to compare it to saying that it was because that's when they can find out what issues and defects the child has.
Yeah.
But he's saying now that 59% is because they've already had their kids and they don't want, you know what I mean? So it's not about those screenings and the timeline of it.
Yeah.
It's that I think a lot of people get their abortions before 20 weeks because it's simply, you want to have the kid growing more and more and more in you and making more of a scene with it and then killing it. And you know what I'm saying? I don't think that he was being honest at that part.
Well, and the other thing is he goes, it's almost like poverty has to do, well, yeah, I agree. People who are economically vulnerable get pushed into situations where they have to make terrible decisions. And by the way, speaking of spending money to create incentives to keep life alive, the good people of Alabama, the good folks in Alabama who passed the anti-abortion law, State Senator Linda Coleman Madison proposed an amendment to the bill that would require the state to provide free prenatal and medical care for mothers who had been denied an abortion by the new law. Her amendment was struck down by a vote of 23-6. So all you pro-life Republicans over there in Alabama who are celebrating the fact that these girls can't have abortions won't even spend the money to give these girls prenatal care or medical care for mothers who are denied an abortion. You're evil as hell, Alabama, for that. Evil. If you know that the vast majority of abortions are happening because these young ladies are in financial duress, this is the absolute minimum of what should have been done for these girls. If this is correct, because I'm getting this from the Young Turks, and they're not objective. We know about them. But if this is correct, and I'm pretty sure it is because I know this flavor of conservatism, it's evil. And you're a moral monster if you don't believe, at minimum, in providing prenatal care for these women. You don't want them to have abortions, but you don't want to spend 1 red cent to help these women. So in that respect, I agree with you, Beaux. I'm probably madder about it than you are because I'm around these people. I swim in it. The solution is not to keep killing people.
Right.
The solution is that we need to legislate. I propose a tax break for all single mothers who gross less than $100,000 yearly household income. I propose a massive tax break for people who will adopt a child from a single mother. We can incentivize our social structure so that we can position people out of poverty. Right. When you see a bunch of people in a homeless shelter, and I have this experience, you know what happens? A person from DHS shows up, interviews you, and figures out the best way possible to get you and your family out of that homeless shelter. You know what they don't do? They don't send in SEAL Team 6 to raise everybody to the ground because poverty is an issue. Dumb argument. But it's also, again, this 1930s eugenic Margaret Sanger, these are unfit people.
Yep.
Oh, disabled, unfit, get them out of culture. Oh, you're going to be poor, burden on the family and on society, get them out. We don't want these people reproducing. I mean, that's not his attitude. I'm saying the people who began these organizations, that was their mindset. Mm-hmm. It's undeniable. We did an expose on Margaret Sanger. Look at it yourself. See if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. They're sourced, by the way. Everything we say is sourced. Keep going.
Now, the other thing that pops up a lot is, well, I don't see why my tax dollars should pay for this. My federal tax dollars are going to this.
True.
No, they're not. They haven't since 1976 when the Hyde Amendment was passed.
It just got passed in
But
May.
my Republican congressman said we're funding Planned Parenthood. Oh, well, they probably did, because Planned Parenthood does a whole lot more than abortion.
Like mammograms?
Like
Only the mammograms.
Yes, like
they
mammograms.
Don't do mammograms.
Dang it, I had that in my back pocket.
What?
Yeah. Imagine if I had a farm. And I was, in my farm, I was distributing, free cheeseburgers to everyone. You'd be like, oh, this is an awesome farm. Mm-hmm. And I donated free cheeseburgers to 100 people a day. Mm-hmm. You'd like my little organization, wouldn't you? Oh, there's a small caveat. I also kill 3 people a day. And you'd probably call the cops to shut down my little farm, and rightly so. And when the cops are going to arrest me, I'd say, hey, only 3% of what I do is killing people. The other stuff is good stuff. What are you doing? You know what they'd say to me? They'd say, it was good about the hamburgers, but you're a serial killer. So this idea that, we're funding Planned Parenthood, but they're funneling the money not to abortion. Stop it. Texas just defunded Planned Parenthood. If you want Planned Parenthood to continue, support it with your own dollars. Don't take my money.
Federal tax dollars do not go to pay for abortions. They don't. But if that's really an issue, my evangelical friends, you ready to cut off aid to Israel?
Yeah.
Because state assistance for abortions, that's widely available there. widely available. So all the money we give them in aid, well, that enables them to pay for that. You ready to do that? No. You just want to punish the people you can look down on here. You don't actually care about the actual issue.
Wow.
You're wrong.
You're absolutely wrong.
You're wrong. I'm good with cutting off aid to Israel, not just for the abortion thing, but because we're supporting a terrible apartheid state that's committing human rights atrocities. I am against what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians for literally the exact same reason that I'm against what you want to propose to continue to do to children in America. You're violating people's human rights. Mm-hmm. And the Israelis, not all of them, but many of them are violating the human rights of the Palestinians. So I agree with you. You also contradicted yourself. Because on the one hand, you say, oh, money's going to Planned Parenthood, but it's not funding abortion. But when you fund the Israelis, you're funding their abortion.
Right. Yeah.
Which is it?
Good point.
But you have to say though,
what?
That the majority of he's right.
He's right that the majority would not be okay with defunding.
I'm an outlier. We're outliers in regard to the abortion thing. You have to. I'm actually. Thank you for that, Beaux. To be honest, like I'm not mad at you at all. We've heard this a trillion times. But he's right about that, and I'm actually gonna post that in the other forum and see what happens with the evangelicals. Yep. He's right there.
Now, here's an interesting stat. Abortion rates are 3 times higher among people who receive Medicaid. Almost like it has to do with poverty. Poverty is a lack of cash. It's not a lack of character. This is why this is happening. It has to do with money. It has to do with the society we have, but we don't want to address any actual issue. We want a magic bullet because we're the U.S. We don't actually want to have to think about it and come up with any kind of real solution. Well, we'll just pass a law. Great. It's not going to change anything. Now, the real issue...
Well, that's been a criticism that I have of the pro-life right-wing side, is they want to have the girl have the baby, but they don't want to pony up any extra dollars for a social programs to help these women. Right. I don't believe that the poverty equals a lack of character. My mother was poor. We were in a homeless shelter. We were in a homeless shelter multiple times in my life. My mother was the highest character person I knew in my childhood. So I know that poverty is not a lack of character. You only have a lack of character when you kill someone. That's bad character. Now, I don't even put that on the woman because in my experience, most of the women that we've talked to were pressured by some scumbag guy. For example, the sex trafficking victim that I talked to that we kind of talked into keeping her kid, who was pregnant, but her scumbag pimping boyfriend wanted her to kill that child because that's gonna mess with his cash. Yeah. That guy has bad character. She's a vulnerable person in a very scary situation in a society that doesn't promote life to her and give her other options. Mm-hmm. She's in a society that tells her this is her only option. Now, it'd be awesome for a woman like that if she were able to say, no, we can't do it because it's illegal. Right. This is the thing, is abortion benefits scummy men who do not want to take responsibility for their actions more than it benefits women. I don't believe most women are hop, skipping, and jumping in there. I've heard over and over and over again about dads threatening to kick out 17-year-old girls, about boyfriends initially saying they're committing and then backing out and leaving the girl to hold the bag herself. I've heard multiple situations where a dude cheats on his girlfriend while the girlfriend is pregnant, and she gets put in a situation where she starts considering it. So I know that abortion, that poverty is not a lack of character, but the most people who I squarely place the blame on are men who refuse to take responsibility for their actions and leave the women to hold the bag. There ought to be strict penalties for men in that situation, and there ought to be societal safety nets that not only are safety nets, but incentivize pregnant women.
I totally agree with that.
There's a lot of women who, if they could go to DHS and get set up with a nice apartment and 6 months worth of maternity to get on their feet, would have kept their baby. But we're too busy sending money to Planned Parenthood, but they're not doing abortions with the money.
Issue when it comes down to all of this is bodily autonomy. And that's where all of this really lies. Now, I did that little short video earlier. And anytime I do something like that, just so you know, I'm researching. I need to know who I'm talking to. I need to know what the real objections are. So I read the comments. A lot of men saying, well, men don't get a choice. You're right. It's not your body. That's how that works. Bodily autonomy. It is not your body. But I have to pay for child support. Fantastic job equating women to property right there. That's brilliant. Your cash is the same as her body? Are you insane?
What?
He doesn't realize that he literally just did the same thing. So he's interacting with men who are against abortion because they
have to pay child support.
They say, look, I have to pay child support. When men are arguing that, what they're saying is, well, wait a second. When the kid's outside of the womb, I have a 50-50 say in what happens because I have to pay child support. Mm-hmm. The government is acknowledging that I had a part in this child's life. Mm-hmm. So how do I not have a part in the child's life before he was born? That's the argument. That's a solid argument. But what did he do? You're comparing cash to the woman's body? Well, didn't you just use cash as a motivation to justify abortion? You did the same thing. Secondly, if you believe in bodily autonomy, thank you. Welcome to the pro-life movement. Do you know why? The body being aborted is not the woman. The body being aborted is the baby. And if anyone wants to keep saying it's not a baby, it's a fetus, let me read to you the Oxford Dictionary's definition of what a fetus is. An unborn offspring of a mammal.
In particular, an unborn human baby.
A human what?
Baby.
An unborn human what?
Baby.
Oh.
More than 8 weeks after conception.
So for all of you who are saying stop saying baby, use fetus, fetus simply means baby. The baby is not the property of the woman. The baby is a separate human organism. Mm-hmm. It's not the property of the woman. Therefore, she doesn't get to slice and dice it and dispense with it as she pleases. So the same argument you're using here is being contradicted by the very fact of abortion. Abortion violates the child's bodily autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how that works.
I agree.
That isn't how that works, guys. But that's what this whole issue stems from. Treating women as property. Because we got to keep them in their place, right? I was going to write all of this up in an article, but then I remembered, there's a lot of numbers and facts and statistics in this, and Alabama's 50th in education kind of seemed pointless at that point.
Wow.
These people are complete bigots. They're just completely bigoted. Can you imagine what would happen? If, because black neighborhoods score very low on testing and scores. Can you imagine if abortion was outlawed in some place in a heavily populated black neighborhood?
Yeah, and
he were to say,
like
these are black kids. We know their intelligence. There's some forms of bigotry that are okay, and some forms of bigotry that are not. Those people in Alabama, they're just all having sex with their cousins, and they're so dumb. It's like, it's a silliness that the leftists did with everybody that voted for Trump, is they're all racist. All those dumb racist people. These leftists are some of the most bigoted people I've ever met in my entire life. That's terrible.
That is terrible.
That's terrible.
He's basically saying I would have written an article, but they wouldn't be able to.
They wouldn't be able to read it.
They're not intelligent enough to be able to read it and understand that's awful.
And if he would have said that about he'd never say that about black people. As a matter of fact, if somebody would have shot a video and said that about black people, he'd be the first one riding his white horse, doing jihad. But you can insult these people.
His channel would probably get shut down.
It's true. It's true. It gets shut down for hate speech.
Yep.
But it's okay to diss an entire state of people. They're just dumb.
I'm holding so much back.
But there is the hot debate right now about whether people like me should continue to do workshops and events. I will tell you the Dothan workshop, it was aborted. We're going to take it to another state. It's what you want us to do, right? Okay. So the real question here isn't any of this. It's, when does life exist, right? No, it's not. It's when does life exist, and the rights of that new life trump the rights of the woman.
When does a new life exist? No, it does not. Yes, it is. That's the entire point. That's why we're pro-life. Mm-hmm. This dude doesn't address at all whether or not we're killing a human being.
Yeah.
He spent 11 minutes dancing around the actual topic. Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Beaux. Since the child in the womb is the woman's property to do with as she pleases, according to you, do you agree with the drafters of the RHA in New York City who said the following, and you can see it on your screen right there. They say, no limits. There should be no gestational limits restricting access to abortion care. There is always someone on the other side of the line. No reasons why a person seeks an abortion at any point is none of our business and should not be a basis for restriction. Do you agree with the logical ramifications of saying that the child inside the woman is the woman's property and the woman's body to do with as she pleases? That means that you would then have to agree with this, that there should be no limitations whatsoever on abortion, because it's the woman's body as long as it's inside the woman. So as Kathy Tran said, the woman is dilating, can you have an abortion? And she responds, there are no limits in this document. Are you good with that? You have to be. And if you are good with that, you're a moral monster. My son was born a week early. And if you carry that silliness to its logical conclusion, we should have been able to butcher him because he was still in utero and Sori's property. How about you deal with the logical ramifications of what you're saying? And yes, this whole silly argument that the rights of the kid are in conflict with the mother and so we have to balance them out. We don't talk about that when the child is born for now. I mean, if Francesca Minerva has her way, who knows? Mm-hmm. But we know this as a parent, that you sacrifice things for your children. That's your obligation. We know this. I mean, good Lord. If we were walking down, if I hear some rustling downstairs and my baby's downstairs and some guy comes and starts attacking my baby and I run out of there to escape, everybody would rightly call me a coward. My duty as a parent is to put my life in danger to defend my child. Everybody knows this. The duty of a parent is to sacrifice for the child. Do you know why? Because I committed an action that brought this child into the world, therefore I am responsible for him or her. It's called responsibility, and no, it's not a punishment. When I tell my 11-year-old to clean his room, I'm not punishing him. Go ahead.
And the thing is, I feel like when we talk about all this, we're missing the fact that children, they're like a gift.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some cultures recognize the beauty and the value of their children and being able to pass something on to another generation. And I think that all of that keeps getting missed, and we're talking about all these facts and stuff. It's like, these are your children. You shouldn't even have to appeal. Nobody should have to tell you need to protect your child. What is happening in the human heart that we have to be told you shouldn't kill your baby? This should be something that we should, the moment, and you see it in some instances, like I told you before, when I was pregnant, and then people would open doors for me and get me water and do all these things. So we haven't lost it completely.
No, the whole community gets together.
Yeah, and I guess because I decided that I wanted my baby, then everybody's like, okay, I guess it's a baby.
Right.
But it's if I decided I didn't want it, then everybody would just rally behind me and say, yeah, just kill your baby.
Yeah.
We have to stop and think things through and figure out plans and ways that we can make it so that way a mother can support her child and keep her child without doing these barbaric acts of murdering children. It's just wild to me. Why appeal to duty? You should, where is your human compassion and your love for your own child?
Yeah. And that's why it's important to me to talk about people like Albany Rose, etc. Because Christians we don't have the corner market on empathy and decency. You don't need to be a Christian to be empathetic to a child.
Right.
And so that's why it's kind of insulting that he started off with the religion thing. Not to us, it's not insulting to me, but it's insulting to all the atheists.
Right.
And non-religious secularists who also don't believe that abortion is a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because to your point, it's simply common human decency. I mean, that's it. And you know what's crazy? If you go to WebMD has a description of a D&C abortion. And
I don't understand how this fits in with evolution either. Like, if we're evolving and we're getting better,
right,
why are we killing our children?
Right. The whole point of evolution is to progenate your DNA profile to the next generation.
Right. So that means the 59% that he was talking about that are aborting their children because they already have children, like, I don't understand how that fits in with us evolving to make ourselves better. If you're saying that for, like, the handicapped people, like, I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand what you're saying with that. Yeah. But that's not what's happening. We're killing all of them.
There's no other species that systemically murders their young.
Right.
Listen to how WebMD describes a D&E abortion. The main difference is that in addition to, because the first one they did was a vacuum abortion where they just suck out the amniotic fluid and tear the kid out. Mm-hmm. This one is a D&E. The main difference is that, which happens prior to 20 weeks. By the way, did we already show what the 20-week-old looks like?
No.
This is what a 20-week child looks like, by the way. That's a 20-week-old child, and I know that because it's my son's 20-week ultrasound. You see that head? The main difference is that in addition to using a vacuum suction in your uterus, you'll also use forceps. What do you need forceps for? And other medical tools, watch this, including one called a curette to scrape the inside of your uterus. That's how they describe it. Oh, we're just going to scrape the inside of your uterus. Why do you have to use euphemisms like this if you're doing the right thing?
Right, yeah.
Why do you have to do that? They're not scraping the inside of the uterus. They're taking the forceps and the curette to tear that child apart. Again, this is what a 24-week-old baby looks like, which is legal in New York City to kill without any questions asked whatsoever. Don't tell me you're just scraping the inside of a uterus. Why are you saying that? Unless you know that the procedure is barbaric as hell and you don't want the people to know exactly what you're doing. This is ridiculous. The rights of the child trump the child. Of course they do. Of course they do. I can't take my kid. Okay, there's bodily autonomy, what you can do with your body. There's also spatial autonomy, meaning I get to have who in my space I want and who I don't. Mm-hmm. So if a dude comes into my house, I can say, get out of my house. I have property rights. Guess what? I can't do that with a baby. Mm-hmm. Can't take my baby and throw him out and appeal to spatial autonomy. I can't say, well, does the rights of my baby trump my rights to spatial autonomy? Yes. Why? Because I put him on this earth. I am responsible for him. Good Lord. You see all like the faux anger. I'm not coming to Alabama. Good. All those people are dumb anyway. What do you want to do? What do you want to do your little workshop for dumb people? They won't even be able to read the instructions, Beaux. Those idiots over there, those inbred dummies in Alabama.
Wow.
That's the real question, because that's how you have to measure society, by ethics. Not your morals, not your religion. But when is it okay to put a gun to a woman's head and say, this is what you're going to do with your body? That's the question you have to answer. Now, I have my opinion. What's yours? Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.
We obviously know what your opinion is. Yeah. His opinion through this entire thing.
Yeah, you guys don't know our opinion. He says it's about ethics, it's not about morals. Ethics are just morals in action, Beaux. I mean, I was educated in New York City, in the Bronx, which we had a pretty low test scores as well in New York City, especially in the black community. So I guess we're all dumb too. But ethics are just morals practiced in a society to achieve a certain goal. And nobody wants to put a gun to any woman's head The only person where that analogy would work would be the child, because a gun is a fatal instrument, and nobody's killing women, and nobody's threatening to kill women, but we have killed 60 million children, Beaux. So again, thank you, Peter, for sending this to us. I look, we're very passionate about this topic. So is the big homie. I'm not mad at anybody as far as that goes. I think there's a lot of people who, it's obvious he didn't think through a lot of what he said. Mm-hmm. And Beaux, if you want to have an actual moderated debate about this topic, I'm all for it. But as we saw, I mean, these arguments are not very difficult to deconstruct. Mm-hmm. Some of them are silly, some of them are sad, and some of them are downright dangerous. They're very, very dangerous. And every time we talk about this, please read Francesca Minerva's article, After Birth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? And see if you can actually out-argue her. And again, look at the Katrina Effort case. These people are talking about killing fully developed babies. And all Francesca is saying is, look, an infant has the exact same moral value as a newborn, as a fetus. Mm-hmm. And as we've said in multiple occasions, there are times when a fetus who's still a candidate for abortion in New York City could be way more developed than a 24-week-old. How old was Cassandra's baby when she was delivered?
That's what I was asking. I thought it was around 20.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she somehow is, and she was very small. As a matter of fact, she was smaller than an 8-month-old who's still a candidate for abortion in New York City. So I guess because we're killing people based on size now, that we should have been able to kill that child ex utero. Just like we should be able to kill the 8-month-old who's vastly more developed than the other one. It's just completely inconsistent. It's a bloody business, and it's terrible, and that's why it's collapsing in America now. And hopefully, God willing, the rest of the world. Love your neighbor.
Take care of each other.
Middle America.
We are the media.
Till next time, guys.